But then he kept on speaking more and more and more to the press, to the point that we're now in a situation where he's literally just had his leg amputated, and the first person he wants to call is Caroline Graham, a reporter on the Mail on Sunday. They featured on Sunday the exchange of text messages between them. They're in the hospital room. He's then trying to communicate with Meghan via that newspaper that the couple hate. They don't like the Mail group because of everything that they've written about, though, being in the trade, that celebrities and other high net worth individuals like nothing less than disloyalty and indiscretion among their closest circle.
Yes.
I can't name names for legal reasons, but quite a few times you discover...
And it doesn't get closer than a father.
Well, quite a few times you would discover on stories, particularly showbiz, that they've been sold to you by relatives.
Right.
It's not every day that you watch a Telegraph podcast and find yourself actually pausing, replaying and asking, wait, did Camilla Tominey really just say that? But that's exactly what happened around the 10:49 mark of the newest episode. And honestly, it marks one of the strangest yet most telling shifts we've seen in the royal commentary space in a long time. Because Camilla Tominey, yes, the same Camilla who has built years of commentary around criticising Meghan Sussex, the same voice that the anti-Sussex crowd clings to like gospel, suddenly sounded like she was leaning toward Meghan's side when the topic of Thomas Markle came up. And it wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. It wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a moment where her tone, her words and her framing suggested something deeper, that even the loudest critics are starting to see what Meghan Sussex's supporters have been saying all along. For years, Meghan Sussex has endured endless noise from the same media commentators who claim to know her life better than she did. They positioned themselves as experts on her family, her decisions, her motives. And among that crowd, Camilla Tominey has been one of the loudest. She was never shy about criticising Meghan Sussex. She dismissed her experiences, doubted her intentions, and fueled narratives that conveniently aligned with the anti-Sussex tone the tabloids thrived on. So for someone like her to finally turn and acknowledge, even in the smallest way, that Meghan Sussex might have been right about her father, that the story might not have been as the tabloids painted it, that is something worth talking about. Because here's the truth. When the people who built their careers criticising you suddenly start shifting their tone, it means the facts have become too obvious to ignore. And that's exactly what's happening. For years, Meghan Sussex said she wished her father had never betrayed her trust, had never sold her out, had never participated in staged photos, had never allowed the tabloids to weaponize him. For years, she said she hoped for privacy, for space, for a real conversation that was not orchestrated by the press. And what did she get in return? Headlines calling her cold, articles mocking her boundaries, commentators painting her as heartless. But as time went on, Thomas Markle's behaviour became harder and harder to defend. The interviews became more desperate, more repetitive, more inaccurate. The sudden media appearances every time Meghan Sussex had a major moment became too convenient. And now, with news surrounding his health and the strange timing of certain reveals, the public is beginning to see what Meghan Sussex supporters knew from the beginning, that the tabloids have used him repeatedly and deliberately. And now, curiously, even critics like Camilla Tominey seem to be acknowledging that something is not adding up. Her tone in the podcast was different, softer, more cautious, almost as if she didn't want to fully commit to defending Thomas Markle this time. She spoke in a way that suggested she understood there were inconsistencies in the narrative. She didn't jump in with the usual anti-Meghan lines. She didn't bite at the opportunity to blame Meghan Sussex. Instead, she seemed to admit, subtly, that Meghan Sussex might have been justified all along. That moment tells you something major is shifting. For years, the anti-Sussex commentators relied heavily on Thomas Markle as one of their go-to weapons. They used him to question Meghan Sussex's character. They used him to attack her choices. They used him to push the idea that she abandoned her father. But now that more of the truth is coming to the surface, truth about timing, truth about manipulation, truth about exploitation, those same commentators are starting to get cautious. Because even the haters can see that the situation around Thomas Markle has been suspicious for a long time. Every interview, every sudden appearance, every conveniently timed narrative drop, they've all seemed engineered. And people like Camilla Tominey have realised that continuing to defend the indefensible would expose their own contradictions. When a critic like her begins to soften, even slightly, that means the truth has become so glaringly obvious that denial is no longer an option. It also means something even more interesting. Some haters are slowly turning into accidental fans. Not fans in the sense that they will suddenly praise Meghan Sussex, but fans in the sense that they are being forced, by reality, by evidence, by undeniable truth, to stop lying about her. That in itself is a victory. That in itself is a shift. Because when someone who has spent years building a brand around criticising Meghan Sussex suddenly can't continue the same narrative, it proves the old storyline has finally collapsed. And the audience watching these commentators can sense the shift too. People who once relied on them for anti-Meghan energy are noticing the hesitation. They're noticing the cracks. They're noticing that even commentators who once attacked Meghan Sussex without blinking are now admitting things don't look right on Thomas Markle's side. And that is causing confusion in the anti-Sussex community. They don't know how to respond when their leaders start sounding soft. They don't know how to attack Meghan Sussex when the people who supplied the talking points are now acknowledging the truth. So the narrative is breaking apart. And that is why this moment in the podcast matters so much. Camilla Tominey's shift might look small on the surface. A tone change, a softened comment, a moment of unexpected agreement with Meghan Sussex's side. But small cracks are how walls collapse. Her acknowledgement shows that the old anti-Meghan scripts are no longer working. She knows that if she continues doubling down on stories that no longer align with observable truth, she will lose credibility. And critics like her value their credibility more than anything. They need to stay relevant. They need to stay believable. And right now, the only believable position regarding Thomas Markle is that the situation is not what the tabloids claimed. The story has too many holes, too many convenient timings, too many contradictions. So Camilla adjusting her stance shows she understands that she cannot keep pretending. And as she adjusts, others will follow. That's how media ecosystems work. Critics are competitive. No one wants to be the one who looks foolish by clinging to a lie when everyone else has moved on. So as the truth becomes harder to deny, more critics will slowly shift toward what they once mocked. They'll begin acknowledging Meghan Sussex's side. They'll start admitting that things don't add up. They'll quietly step back from the old anti-Sussex lines. And before long, we will see more of these surprising moments where the very people who criticised her are now forced to admit, even unwillingly, that she was right. This moment also demonstrates the power Meghan Sussex has had all along. Truth. She didn't play the media's game. She didn't join the circus. She didn't do staged interviews to counter her father. She stayed silent. She stayed consistent. And because of that consistency, the truth has finally begun revealing itself through the cracks in her critics' narratives. The more the facts surface, the more the suspicious timing becomes clear, the more the tabloids' usage of Thomas Markle becomes undeniable, the more critics like Camilla Tominey are forced to adjust. What we witnessed in that podcast is not just a surprising moment, it is a turning point. A sign that even those who built their careers criticising Meghan Sussex are running out of narratives. A sign that haters are being dragged by reality into acknowledging truth. A sign that the anti-Meghan machine is weakening under the weight of its own inconsistencies. And it sends a powerful message. When truth stands firm long enough, people cannot deny it forever. Not even the haters. Not even the critics who spent years attacking Meghan Sussex. Not even the voices who profited from creating false narratives. The truth always pushes its way through, and when it does, even the people who once fueled the misinformation begin to shift toward honesty. So yes, it's surprising to hear someone like Camilla Tominey speak in a way that aligns with Meghan Sussex's truth. But it's also inevitable. Because when a lie is stretched for too long, it snaps. And right now, the narratives about Thomas Markle are snapping one by one. Commentators are seeing it. Audiences are seeing it. Even the haters are seeing it. What we watched in that moment at 10:49 was the beginning of something bigger. The start of critics realising that Meghan Sussex was telling the truth all along, and that continuing to attack her would only expose themselves. And as more critics make this shift, willingly or not, we will see exactly what Meghan's supporters have been waiting for, the truth finally standing on its own, undeniable and clear.